This is the Stephan Hogan Podcast.
Master blacksmiths, they spend decades perfecting their blades. Songwriters, too, spend years honing their voice, phrasing, and emotional depth. There's honor in the repetition, the discipline, the quiet pursuit of mastery. Neither is rushed. Both a knife and a song can be forged in fire. Only one cuts air and the other cuts silence.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I heard you say that you got to keep your blade sharp.
I agree, yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, it's funny because I think that in saying that, I've seen moments where I haven't, and anyone that, you get distracted by life. You get distracted by certain things and sometimes you forget. It wasn't all that long ago. I was in the house and I was like, I wanted to sit down and just play some guitar and on a mic. I was going to just work up some new songs that I would do, playing some of the shows that I do. And I realized I didn't even have a microphone in my house. And I remember the days that when I had a band and everything, I had 20 microphones so I went downstairs and I opened this thing up and I've got, some of these XLR cables and instrument cables and stuff. And I was like, there's not one microphone in here. And then I'm like, I'm going to have to plug into a Bose speaker that is really made to be, like a Bluetooth speaker to plug my guitar. And in that realization, I was like, what am I doing? That's really where I grow and where I become the songwriter that I am or the performer that I am. That was kind of an epiphany. I was like, man, I'm losing myself because I'm not realizing that I need to focus on that part. And that was not that long ago. And of course I immediately went on and ordered a microphone and got stuff, and I sat down and I started playing every day. Cause then you know how there's just a difference. You can sit there with an acoustic guitar and no microphone. And it's great. You can sit there but there's something about plugging it in and getting that, those sounds to last a little longer and those notes sing a little longer and that guitar sings a little longer is a cool thing. So back to the point of honing your craft, I think you have to be pretty intentional to do it. I think it's easy to get distracted, and I've certainly done that. I've had times where I've written a ton and where people were like, I can't believe you write that much. And then I've had spans, which more recently, where I write a lot less. And I think you can tell yourself the ideas. You're like, well, I'm focusing on quality more than quantity, but quantity is also very valuable because you're sharpening that tool, right? For that swipe, that blade, when you actually need to cut that certain thing. You're sitting there honing that blade, like you say, and then at some point it's going to be used as a tool, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's value in both that. You don't want to run yourself ragged and where you're like, I just don't even want to write another song. And I got to that point at some point, a few years ago, where I was like, I just got to write a little bit less, but then you can fall into oh, I don't want to write more. And then you start, but then you got to talk yourself into doing that. And, it's definitely a craft, and you can lose, it's riding a bike, same thing. You're not going to forget how to ride a bike, but you're not going to be doing all the same stuff you were when you were riding that bike every day. You know what I mean? You've got to kind of get back into that and perfect that part of it. So, I think advice wise, it's just keep your chops. Even if I still do a lot of things. I do crossword puzzles every day, and I those kind of things still are moving my brain and helping me think about, words and the use of words and language. So that's good, but I think you definitely have to keep it sharp, man. You can get in a room sometimes when you haven't been writing a ton with guys that are writing a bunch that are great, and guys or girls, and you're like, damn. They're just flying through, and I always used to feel like I was kind of the one ahead of it and driving it, and people saying, keep up. And then if you don't keep it sharp, you'll get in a room pretty quick and go, I got to keep up here,
So repetition,
man. There's no doubt about it. I think everybody's always said that. Any great songwriters you talk to, they say you got to just write. You know, I mean, I think there's no one that writes their first song and it's a great song, and they write their second song and it's a great song, and then all the songs they write are great songs. I mean, you know, you look at the percentages of great songwriters, you know, some of the best that had 10 hits, and even if you're not just measuring it by hit, but you know, had 50 great songs, like incredible songs, and they wrote 5,000 songs. I mean, the percentages just are not, you know, and you can have songs that have great lines in them, but the whole thing didn't quite make sense, or a great hook that you just didn't quite find your way to the right part of it, or to make that hook move where people go, oh, or, you know, there's so many different things that can go wrong in a song when you write it, that it's really hard to write one to the wall where you're like, there's nothing I would change about that. And I think those are the songs that really resonate with people.
Yeah, I was talking with Tom Douglas, and he was like saying the same thing. He's like 72 or something, and he's like, I've written 5,000 songs, and of those 5,000, let's say, and he just boiled it down percentage-wise, almost as if you were doing a sales metric, like how many closes you would get based off of the amount of volume of calls you made or whatever it was.
Right, and it's terrible.
And it's the same thing with songs, you know? It's almost like you have to write so many before you have the
and it gets
2, 3, whatever it is.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think about that a lot. I'm like, I think that's where, you know, people project onto certain songs. They're like, oh man, that guy's the best. Like everything he writes is gold. And you're like, probably not.
Yeah.
Like for any songwriter there is. I mean, you've got songs that are not great. Of course, I think your bar gets a little higher as you start writing songs. You know, you're not going to write a terrible song. You know, Tom Douglas not going to write a terrible song. But he also, I'm sure on a day where he's like, yeah, you know, it's not my favorite, or it's not going to be a terrible song. Probably still going to be a good song. Might not be the greatest song, you know, but there's an opportunity every time he sits down that it is.
Those are his exact words. He says, an X amount of those might be good songs, but only so many are going to be great songs.
Yeah.
And you've had some songs that obviously got legs and were great songs. Did you know that at the time?
You know, I think it's funny. I think it's kind of in reverse. I think I've written songs that I thought for sure, I was like, that's going to be a hit and it's going to line up because so-and-so is already recording it and they love it. And then for one reason or another, the song doesn't get singled or doesn't even make the record or certain things like that. As far as, like for when we wrote Whiskey on My Breath, we loved the song. We were like, this is so cool. This is great. You know, we listened to it like 40 something times. We work taped it 40 something times. And then listened to it while we all went to sleep, which is kind of funny. We were all on a writer's retreat, but, in case you didn't know, we felt it was pretty special. And we sent, Brett sent that to Jimmy Harnan, like, I mean, basically middle of the night for Atlanta time, and we were in Mexico. And Jimmy reacted to that with, you know, saying, I think this might be one of your career songs. So that got us excited. We were like, yeah, this is great. But also at the time, Brett had not even inked his full record deal with them. I mean, it was in long form, but it wasn't signed. So, you know, we didn't know anything about it. It's, you know, he had no songs out. They didn't have a record, you know, I mean, done yet. So we definitely weren't like, this is going to be the biggest song and, you know, Brett's going to be a superstar. Not because Brett is not a superstar. It's just because we know how the business works and you're like, we sure hope so. But
how does this business work?
Well, there's a lot of people that are really, really good at music. I mean, really good. And most of them don't make it. That's how the business works. You know, I mean, it's like, so you can't really, I think if you were good at forecasting who would become the stars, you'd go pretty far. I mean, even if you look at labels, I mean, labels miss, how many guys are signed at Sony, there might be 80 single male artists on there or something. And, 15, 16 of them work. I mean, that's not, and they've gotten to the point of going all the way to going, this is good enough. People are going to come out and watch them. We're going to sign them to a record deal. And those numbers I'm pulling out of the air, but that seems about right. So yeah, I think it's just, I've met people that I certainly thought would be stars that are, now not even in music anymore. And then there are other people where you're like, oh, I think they could be, but I'm not sure. And then they work their ass off and become a big star. And you're like, yeah, that's what it's all about. But I think anyone that gets to that level works harder than people realize. Not people in the industry or whatever. I just think your normal average Joe. I think a lot of people love to say, well, it's an overnight success, or, they only made it because of this or because of that. I don't think that's ever the case. I don't think anybody just got lucky and then became a superstar and stayed at that level because they're just lucky. That's not even close to true. Like the hardest working people ever, Is the common denominator obviously hard work, but is it writing hours or performing hours or both? What do you see on those people that really go the distance in terms of the hard work that they put in? What is that extra little secret sauce? I don't know that you could, I mean, I think that could be artist specific. Cause I think there are some artists that write more and, work on their, and others that work on their performance or live show more. But I don't think it's skewed like insanely differently. You might have somebody that's 50, 60% really goes after the writing. And then that other 40, 50% is on the live show. And you might have someone that's at like 70, 30, the difference. But I don't think it gets much outside of that. I don't think you have someone that's 100% just all I'm doing is show wise. There might be a couple, but I think writing is good for the artists in the sense that when they're performing songs that they wrote, it's like you can tell, you know what I mean? It's kind of, there's no BS there. Like the audience, whether they know it or not, I think the songs the artist wrote that they're performing, it comes through in the music and the performance. So, what dumbfounds me is my initial perception of songwriters in Nashville. And I think for people listening that aren't from the South in particular, when you think of people in the South, there is this thought of, oh, they're rednecks, and there's the cliches. It's almost if you thought about a California person, and this might be now or then, but you think of a stereotype. There's like an archetype or architect. What is it called? An archetype or architect.
Yeah, something like that.
Or maybe archetype. I don't know.
I think it's whatever. But it was like the Beach Boys days. Like everyone thought California people surfed, right?
Right, yeah.
And then you think of like, you're from Alabama. So for instance, you think of someone from Alabama and you're like, oh, they're just a redneck that hunts all the time, which you may hunt and do all of those things. But that is not the sum of who you are. And what is interesting to me is that there are these people that have lived what to me are not Chris Christopherson, Rhodes Scholar, studying English lives,
right?
But they're able to get into a room, sit down with a pen and paper and write something that is phenomenal, that connects with the human heart like nobody else can. And I'm curious because it's so interesting to me to find people like you yourself. You love to golf, you love to hunt, you love to do things outside of songwriting,
right?
But somehow you ended up in this place where you can take lyrics, your imagination, your life experience, put it together, bundle it up, collaborate, and then release something that the world hears. Where did you get that ability to be able to really kind of like go inward and then be able to share that. Because it's almost like you have to be willing to go to the depths of who you are, in a sense, to be able to share that and to be able to get a great song.
Yeah. I think that some of it's learned and some of it it may be learned along the way, as in the sense of you weren't learning to write a song, but you learned how to tell a story or how to, put things into words that make sense for people. And then as you become a songwriter, you then start learning to craft the song, right? I think most songwriters that I know have a common denominator, and it's usually wit. I think a lot of songwriters are very quick with wit. I notice it. Everyone you're around that are songwriters, when we do these, if you do a songwriters retreat, or if we're playing golf and there's 5 or 6 songwriters and one guy that's not, you notice the comments these people say. They're like, oh, just hang out with songwriters. They beat you to the punch every time. And, you'll make one witty joke and someone will fire back with that. And there's something, I think, to that quick, like, snap of the brain that makes you be able to sit down and in 2 hours, 3 hours, create something. I think your mind is moving a little ahead, a couple steps ahead. And I think that's a common thing among people that are great songwriters. And I don't know that it comes from because they're a songwriter, that's where they gain that wit. I think it's most people have that. And there are some that might be less than others. And some guys that are a little more deliberate and really have to think through the process of, like, what it is I'm going to say next. And there's value to that too. But I think for being able to take all of the stuff that happens in your life, of, playing golf or hunting or fishing or, what you go through with family or friends or anything, and putting it into one song. I feel like people kind of there are not a ton of people that were just absolutely awful and then really learned to be great songwriters. I feel like most of those people had that in them and then just kind of like drew it up out of them, like being around songwriters or writing a song and learning, I like doing that, or whatever it might be, and taking experiences. And I think really good songwriters are able to put themselves in a moment that either they have not been through, so with sympathy instead of empathy, that's a big thing, or being able to place themselves in a moment they're not in the moment. So remembering, how did I feel when I was going through a heartbreak, even though right now everything's good? How do I feel that emotion, or what were those words? What was that feeling? I think that's a lot of value to it. I think you have to be able to take yourself out of the moment and really focus on what you were feeling in that moment, or what that felt like, what that sounded like, what that smelled like, what that looked like, in those moments when you're sitting there. I was trying to picture exactly where I am. If we're writing a song about, being down on the bayou, I'm like picturing a thing in my head. And my picture might be different than your picture and his picture, but I'm asking, I'm going, are we sitting, by a cypress stump and fishing, and there's like a breeze, and what time is it? Like 4:00 in the afternoon? Like, what are we doing? Who's doing this over here? What are we seeing? Like, those kind of things help me get into that.
The senses.
Yeah, because I think that's where, if you can hit all those things, I mean, that's what really strikes people. It's not just talking about what you see. I mean, it's like, what are you hearing? And, the smell of this, or the, those kind of things of, I think when you put all those together, you can really take someone to a place, and wherever they're thinking of, no one's thinking that of the exact same place until possibly when you put a music video or something, and then someone that might replace. It's like reading a book, and then you go watch the movie. You're like, well, that's not really how I saw it. But once you watch the movie, it's kind of, now that's replacing.
Yeah.
So
let's say you have all these elements of the senses, and then you have the hook. And what I've noticed a lot in listening to music is a lot of times before the hook, you have the juxtaposition of what the hook is.
Mm-hmm.
So like if the hook was, cold, everything before it would be hot.
Right.
Is that something that you think about when you're writing and you're trying to basically point everything in the song to that line at the end of the chorus?
It can be. I think sometimes it becomes a little bit second nature when you do it so much, because you'll write a line before it and then go, oh, we just did that without meaning to do that. That's kind of I'm sure I was more intentional about it early on. I think, and it's nice to have that juxtaposition for sure. And it, it makes it hit for a reason that way. You're like, oh, wow, I see what they did there. And some people, half the listeners probably never realize you do that. There are certain things you might do in a song that no one will ever notice, but the songwriters do. And they don't know they don't notice it, but they like the song better because,
like a double entendre.
Sure. Yeah. Any of those kind of things where they, they notice it, but they don't think they notice it. I think that's what makes great songs. I also think I'm a fan of, like you said, anything you can do, be it the juxtapositions or, your cadences, alliterations, all those kind of things matter. I think a main thing I notice with greener writers that have written less is they want to put cool lines in the song. So they're like, hey, this is a cool line. And it might be a cool line, but it might not be the right line for this song. And I think there's writing to the hook of a song is pretty important, and something I learned early on from some great songwriters about just, if you can take your line and then finish it with the hook of the song. And throughout each line, it might take 2 lines to do that or whatever it might be, however you're writing the song. But if you can just say that one line and then finish it with your actual hook from the song, writing every line straight to the hook, I think it's hard to miss on like the song at least being a good song, like where everyone's like, I get it. Sometimes you write the songs, people are like, I don't quite get that. And that's usually when you didn't write to the hook. Like you're writing something and then you out of left field, you're like, you bring a heartbreak or something and you're like, we don't need to talk about that. This is a song about going out and drinking with your buddies and having a good time. You don't have to just randomly throw in there like, oh yeah, and you broke my heart, but now look, I'm like, unless you want to do it for the whole song, do it that way. But I think sometimes you pull in things that's a cool line, or wow, I like the way that fits. Being able to take that out of that song, say, let's use that for a different song, or maybe that's a hook of a song, or maybe that's a starting line on a different song.
It's almost like less is more. And sometimes we want to overcomplicate things.
Right.
And because your brain's like, oh, heartbreak or whatever, or the girl.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, we're in that moment.
Right.
The girl doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
Because that takes the story in a different direction.
Right. Because then people are like, well, wait, what happened with that part?
What about that chick?
Exactly. What about that chick? Yeah. So I think that's kind of, there's out of left field lines sometimes where, I'll hear songs on the radio now that I love the first verse and I love the chorus. And then the second verse, I'm like, y'all just like that sounds cool.
What's your philosophy on second verses?
I'm a fan of the second verse being better than the first verse. And I think there's no wrong way to think about it. I think some people think, listen, once you've hit the chorus and people love it and it's a hit, and there are some songs that are lighter where it might not matter. But to me, I think you have to, I like the part of someone likes the first verse of a song, loves the chorus of a song. And then they're like, yeah, I get it. But then the second verse starts and they're like, oh man, now I love this song. And then then that chorus. And then if it's a song that has a bridge, I think bridges should be awesome or they don't need to exist. It's that wrapping it up in a bow, but doing it in a way that's like, people didn't think you were going to do that. I'm almost always guessing on bridges. Like, I'm like, I bet I can guess what this bridge is. And usually the songs I love the most are where I'm like, oh, they did that so much better than I thought they would. And it's not just this placeholder of like, here we go, we're going to lead back into the chorus. You know, it's like where they really turn it.
It's like a 3-minute movie.
Yeah. Well, that's the
sonically, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a story, and that's the thing of country music in particular, is that bridge is almost the climax.
Right. It's like, here you go. It's like we're reminding you of what just happened in the whole movie, and now we're going to go back and pay off this chorus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why, like you said, I mean, 3 minutes now, it's like it becomes less and less. Now it's, you know, I remember it used to be like 3 minutes, 15 seconds was. And then it was like 3:10, and it's like 3 minutes on the button is the song. And now they're like 2:40. We want 2:40. I mean, you know, they're fighting for that
attention.
space,
it's because of our trained attention spans,
no doubt,
through scrolling on our phones.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about this because I think of visualizers. I think of TikTok songs that go viral, and how you could have a 15-second audio clip be something that gets hundreds of millions of views and is used, you know?
Right. And
so how does that change the way that a songwriter is going to start approaching songs in the next decade?
I don't know. I don't know that, I don't know what it's going to look like being a songwriter in a decade. I think there's a lot of things fighting with what would be a profession of being a songwriter. Obviously AI, obviously attention spans, obviously a 15-second clip could be the best 15 seconds of a not great song, but that's just hooky. You know what I mean? So, and the rest of it could be terrible, but at that point it doesn't matter. You have all these people saying, I love this guy, and they think they love that song, and it doesn't matter what's in the rest of the song. I don't know. I haven't been on that side of it. I'm not focused on that. Maybe I should be, but that's one fear I think I have I think songwriting, unfortunately, I think will go the way of the dinosaurs at some point, because, you know, AI is learning so quickly. And the one thing it doesn't have right now is it's missing the human element of just little certain things, the way we'd say things and stuff like that. It's not quite catching.
So
but it's getting better.
Here's a question. This is something I wanted to talk about because I had a conversation with, do you know who Tony Harrell MV2 is?
Yeah.
I was talking to him last week, and we were talking about AI and things like that. And I was basically like talking to him about me experimenting with it. And it's really interesting how you can take an idea or a lyric or lines or a verse, input it, but keep like, say, no, write this line that way, but it'll give you an idea. And all of a sudden you can spit out a song very fast. Then you plug that into an AI that can create a demo of that song, right. And it creates an AI demo. And in an hour you can have one song. Yeah,
and you tell the singer, make him sound more gritty, or you can say make him sound prettier, or make it sound more country, or make it sound less country. I mean,
but it requires a human for the input into those little intricacies that you're talking about
now.
Yeah. But I mean, also, I think in all digital ages, we see acceleration, and then there's this V, upside down V, where it, you know, goes down. I think in the 40s, 50s, songs were 2-ish minutes.
Yeah.
They got longer, and now we see them going shorter again. We saw an acceleration in tech. Now we see people wanting to be off their phones and off social media. We see an acceleration in AI, and I think that we're going to see a deceleration because people are going to want the humanity back in things. And I do think that there's a hunger for humanity, but also in the toolbox of the songwriter now, how important is it to utilize AI to be able to stay in the game, stay in the race? Because it's been said that people that learn how to use AI now and utilize it are going to be the people that in the next 5 years are the most successful.
I've seen that, and that's unfortunate for me because I don't really use it professionally or personally much, honestly. I think I'm still new to it, and I'm kind of, I think people will show me something. Look at this, AI did this. I'm like, that's incredible. At some point, I'll have to dive into it, I think. Although, I don't know. There's a lot to it. I haven't used that, but I also remember thinking to myself years ago, man, I really should have just learned how to use Pro Tools and make my own demos. And I think there's a lot of people that have, and they're incredible at it. And now, like you said, you can go get an AI and upload a work tape off your voice memos and go make this a demo. And in a total of maybe 20 minutes of sitting there telling it to do something more how you want it.
Yeah.
It's definitely good enough to be sent to someone for them to hear it, to see if they want to record it.
Yeah.
Or, so.
I heard one last week. It was a great song, and it was clearly an AI demo because the guitars have this like weird digitization sound to them or something.
Yeah.
But the vocal just sounded like a perfect male tuned vocal.
And there's, like I said, I don't use it a ton, but I think just listening to my buddies that use it some, and then also our producers and everything else, they're saying you can do that, and then you can pull the stems of everything you like, and you don't like that weird guitar sound, and you just go lay down the guitar that you do like right on top of it. So that took you,
and you get a wave file,
yeah,
and then you put the artist in, and you have the artist sing the vocal,
yeah, or you can make it sound like an artist,
or clone the artist,
yeah, which we've done. I won't say the artists that I've been a part of this in a group text, but I've like famous big artists. Another songwriter buddy of mine took a song that was written and had it AI'd like his vocal and sent it to him in the group text. And he was like, what? He's like, I legitimately would have thought I sang that song. Like I went and recorded that song.
And he probably liked it more because it was him singing it too.
Right.
So the psychological factor.
You're going to sound like singing it.
Yeah, yeah.
You're like, well, that's my range, and that makes sense for me. So
this leads me to my next big question. Not to skip past AI, but it also pertains to this whole profession of yours, because you have been on the artist side and the writer's side, and it seems like you're more in the writer's seat now. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, to an extent. I still play a ton of shows, so that's just
you
me
play
acoustic.
A lot. Yeah,
and I like it that way. But I love being on stage and performing, no doubt. And I still do quite a few shows. So yes, but I'm not writing new songs for me as an artist. So
like to cut a record, to go to radio and all that stuff.
I'm dabbling in the idea, but I'm not. Yeah, definitely. The last 10 years has been, really more writer side.
How much has it served you meeting other artists as a writer? Because I don't know that you can come to Nashville as a songwriter that is quote unquote green, like you said, at this point in time, and find a career as just a songwriter. Do you think you can? Without having the connections of a group chat where you can send it to the artist after you wrote it with their vocal on it in AI and say, hey, we think this would be a killer tune for you. What do you think? And then they hear it and they're going to be, predisposed to loving it already because they hear themselves on it.
I think it is still a viable option. I think you can move here and say, I only want to be a songwriter. I think you're just then going to have to meet other songwriters that kind of have the access to that chain. You know what I mean? You might have someone who has just started having some cuts that knows me, or another songwriter that writes a bunch on that, what I guess you can call it other level or something. I don't know how to describe it. Doesn't mean they're better songs, just more listened to. And then that person might know someone that knows someone, and they move to town. They say, hey, yeah. And then, one day they end up in a room with the right person that's writing a bunch of those songs, and they go, this guy's great. And then they start writing more with those writers. And then, they may meet the next Luke Combs hanging out somewhere, that has nothing going on as an artist but goes, I want to be an artist and I want to write too, and they become buddies. You never know. I mean, I think it is. I wouldn't tell someone, don't move here, it's impossible. I would tell people it's always been way harder than people think it is. I don't think it's not for the faint of heart. I can't tell you how many people I've known that have moved to town and lasted 2-3 years, and they're like, I can't do it anymore, and they're gone.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a lot of gumption,
Yeah.
a lot of elbow grease, a lot of hard work, and a lot of, like connections and meeting people. There's a social aspect to it that I think is very important. And I think that it makes it tough for people that are not very social, or, and those people might be the backbone of the creation, that know a couple guys that are very social. Like I've always been a social guy. I met most of the people when I first came to town because I would go out 3-4 nights a week, and I would meet other people that were kind of in the same boat as me. Like we play guitar and we sing, and we like to go out and play shows, and we like to write songs. And, early on, those songwriting sessions may be at, 2 a.m. after you get home from the bar and sit down and let's try and write something. And, we didn't get it done. Let's put something on the books, and you start writing. And then as you go down the road, you have 30 of those people that have become hit songwriters or big successful songwriters. And then you have 500 of those people that, I hadn't talked to them in a few years, or, they message me every once in a while. Hey man, saw you're going to be in this town. That's where I live now. And come say what's up, those kind of things. So,
yeah. How has being a dad changed you as a man and as a songwriter?
As a man, I mean, in general, I don't think anyone ever understands. I think I always thought I understood when people were like, oh yeah, my son or my daughter. I don't think you can understand the level of love that you have for anyone on the planet until you have a kid. It just changes everything. I think that it's made me more mindful about what I do, just because of him. So, whereas
How so?
I think I'm less, I'm more risk averse. I think, certain things I used to, without a doubt, I'd be like, yeah, let's go jump out of an airplane. That's fine. It's awesome. I'm not saying I won't. I'm just going to think it through a little more, and just in general, I think things that you do, I think prior to having a kid, even being married and everything, I think human nature, your first reaction to everything is yourself. So when Stephan asks me, hey man, you want to go do this? I'm going to think, what do I have going on now? Oh yeah, I'm free to do that. And then I might go to my wife and say, hey, I really want to do this. What's going on? I think now having a kid, my first thought is my kid. So I'm not even like, yeah, I can do that. I'm like, oh, I got to think about it. Like, do I want to spend 7 days away from my kid? It's got to be something pretty awesome. You know what I mean? Like or something that's going to like benefit something where I can bring him back there at another point or something like that. I think they become your number one. I think mom becomes number two because it's the mother of your child, and then you become number three. So you go from like first place, your wife being second place, or your significant other being second place. I think that's human nature. I think people can say they're first. Your first thought is me because I want to protect them, right? But once you have the kid becomes first, I think, and then mom becomes second, and then you kind of become third on your thoughts of like if decisions for things you're going to do or how you go about certain things. So I think that changed me a lot. I think I became less the center of my centrifugal motion started moving. He's in the center of the centrifugal, and I was the center of the centrifugal before that, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's funny because, as you know, you have a kid. I mean, there are certain things that dictate what goes on in your day that you didn't have before. You weren't like, oh, well, I got to go get him from school, or, oh, he's got the whole day off from school that day, so I'm going to hang out with him. Those things change what you would be doing if you didn't have a kid, for sure.
One of the coolest things I think about just in our interaction was that today you were like, can we be done by X amount of time so I can go get my son from school?
Yeah, no doubt. And I love picking him up from school. Dropping him off is kind of hard because like I hate if he's not having a good, like he'll cling onto my leg or something some morning. Sometimes he's fine, but that's hard. You walk away from there like emotionally, like, God, I feel bad for him. But every time you pick him up, man, they're always like, he's like, Dad, like runs across the room or the playground or whatever. I mean, it's a great feeling. And it's great to hear about his day, be the first person to hear about his day. What went on, buddy? And I love being able to do it. So when I get days that I can do it and that there's an opportunity to, I always want to.
Yeah. How long have you been married?
6 years and was in March. So
awesome.
Yeah. Yep.
Congrats.
Thanks, man.
How long did you date before you got married?
We were together for a little over 2 years. So it's
8 years?
Yeah.
Going on a decade together?
Getting there. That's right.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
What does your wife do?
She has when I first met her, she worked at Vanderbilt in nephrology research, like kidney research.
Oh, wow.
And then she had an event planning company. She did like a couple events. She didn't really spend a ton of time with that, but she did it just because she's good at it. And then, of course, full-time mom. And then she just started last December. She started a company called the Southern Wives Club with another songwriter's wife. And they're doing really well. They do like hats, hats and sweatshirts, and it's kind of a clothing brand, but like a lifestyle brand.
Oh, cool.
And they're about to launch a cross-branding thing with Brittany Aldean beginning of July. And then they've done kind of some of the cross-branding stuff and all that. It's good. She loves it.
That's awesome.
She's in that whole design world of constantly designing hats and stuff like that. So it's cool.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a stereotype of women sometimes that it's like, oh, they have a kid and they stay home. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's also women that are wired that want to work and that like it.
Yeah.
Is she like that?
Yeah, I think so. I think she's definitely happier when she's not just consumed by only being a mother or, I think it'd be hard for anybody. I mean, think about if, you spend 80% of your day and your only interaction is with a little kid. That's a lot. I mean, that's hard. That'd be hard for anybody to do.
Yeah, dude.
So you'd
be exhausted.
Right.
A week of that,
which is
dude.
where you can understand that part being there where they're like, that's a full-time job because, for maybe an hour or two of that, it's awesome. And the rest of the time you're like, I just need social interaction or I need adult interaction or something else to do. And Ashley's definitely that way. She thrives more on having something else to do besides just that. But
yeah, I think about, I've had this conversation a lot lately, but it's been, I don't think women were meant to have a kid and be isolated in a house all day because traditionally you would be in a tribe.
Right. Yeah.
For thousands of years. So there'd be a bunch of women with kids.
Right.
You'd probably be doing things. You'd probably share the load of helping raise children and all that.
Yeah.
But now in America, there's all this isolation of women.
Agreed.
So I think it's a good thing for that outlet. I think it's important. And it's just something I've noticed for mental health for my wife, who's in this room that you can't see right now, but that it's important to not have to just be there 24/7 because it will drive you crazy. It'd drive me crazy.
Oh, 100%.
Like I love my son. Don't get me wrong, but his energy is through the roof, and I just don't have that all day long,
Yeah.
And it's crazy. We both have sons, and they're both named Harlan.
That's right. Yeah. That's a small world.
Yeah, dude. And I'll tell you what the name means if you don't know.
No, I don't.
Noble friend and noble warrior.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, he would appreciate both of those.
Yeah.
He's a good friend, and he's definitely a little warrior.
See, there you go, man. I believe a lot about you live into the name that you've been given. I'm just into that. And that's why we picked the name partially. And so it's cool that we have that in common. I lost my dad in January, and I saw your post about Father's Day.
Yeah.
And Sunday was a really hard day for me. Was it for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, it's bittersweet because, because you're on both ends of it, right? So the cool thing is, and what we share, is that it's awesome to be a dad and have that as Father's Day. But, you're still always your parent's kid, no matter how old you get. That's the harder part. So I think it's like, I didn't foresee it being tough on me. I think it was tougher because I just see all the posts or like people like, out on the golf course with my dad on Father's Day. You see those and consume those things off social media or friends in a group text or whatever it might be. And so it was definitely more somber. I definitely was like, I don't know, it kind of hit me harder than I thought it would. And
me too.
And I think, you know what though? That means that at least there was some great relationship there for a reason that, at least we're lucky enough to have fathers that when they're gone, we're like, man, like it's leaves a void.
What are your favorite memories with your dad?
Man, well, he loved music. He loved Don Williams, and he loved Creedence Clearwater Revival and the Doobie Brothers and a bunch of the classic rock stuff. So I appreciate that he always would play that stuff for me. And, we'd go, he had like a Mazda RX-7 convertible, like when they first came out, like 1988, something like that. And it was like the first car that ever had a CD player built into the car. And, the difference of sound out of a tape and a CD was, they were like, this is the thing. And it had these headrest speakers in it. And he'd wait till it was like my bedtime, and he'd be like, all right, let's go out. And we'd go out to the car, and I'd have to stand up on the seat, but it had those headrest speakers. And I'd stand up on the seat and put my head back, and we would crank like CCR or Don Williams or whatever on these CD players. And he'd just sit in the car and smoking cigarettes, drinking a beer with the top down, sitting out in the driveway. My mom would come out and be like, how much longer? And he'd be like, we're going to listen to music. So that was always a good memory I had of him. I've got a lot of great ones, man. He was a good dude.
Is he the reason that you got into music?
No, really. I did, he loves music and always had an affinity for it. So that's for sure. But he's not a musical guy. I never played any instruments, couldn't sing, anything like that. And I think when I first started playing shows like out at bars and stuff, I was in college, and I called him. I was like, Dad, you got to come see me play. I'm playing this Friday night at, AJ's in Tallahassee. And he was like, what, you're playing? What do you mean you're playing? I was like, I'm playing a show. He's like, you and a guitar? And I was like, yeah, like he didn't even, didn't cross his mind. But as years went by, he's a great writer, at, writing, poetry and verse and prose and everything. He was always a great writer and a big consumer of, intellectual, papers and stuff like that. Always a crossword.
So you're cut from the cloth, man.
Yeah, he definitely had that side, and I do appreciate he was always a great critic of my songs. I think he loved a lot of songs I wrote, and then certain ones he would say, I don't really know what you mean here. And sometimes I'd tell him what I mean. He's like, oh my gosh. He's like, that went over my head. He's like, man, that makes it even better. Or sometimes he'd be like, oh yeah, all right. But he loved it. He would, anything I could send him, or whenever I'd get back over to Mobile and see him, he would always be like, make sure you bring your guitar. He wanted to hear me play some songs. And so.
Was he a good metric for, like, this is how I was with my dad growing up. I would finish writing something and I would share it with him, and he would either like it or have a critique, most often a critique. But it would send me back into my room as a kid, and I'd like work harder to bring it, to burn it onto a CD, to go bring it back to him, to play for him.
Yeah.
Because my dad was a writer too. He was never professionally, but I think having that father figure that you want to make proud, and then you're a writer and you can bring them your song, and then they actually give you good feedback, is a really special thing.
Yeah.
So was your metric at a point in your life, if dad likes it, I know it's a good song?
I think so, because I don't think he never tended to it happens sometimes where you'll write a song that you're like, that's a good song, but then someone, a friend or somebody will be like, oh, I love that song. And you're like, really? For him, I don't think that was ever the case. I think he always I think his favorites were also my favorites. And I don't know if that was the chicken or the egg. I don't know if because he loved it made me like it more, or if he just could tell I loved it. I'm not sure. But he definitely would, he really listened to songs, he was very there in the moment listening to the lyric. And so it always felt good when I'd send him one. He'd be like, man, or, I still know the ones that he loved the most. And I wrote one about him. That was probably the one that I was like terrified to play for him, because it was honest. Always, it's not like everything was butterflies and sunshine the whole way through life. It's never that way. But he definitely loved it. So that was good. Yeah.
That's cool, man. Yeah, that's special when you can share that gift of music and song and with your dad.
Yeah.
Because I think about a lot of my biggest thing is I miss calling him, because I would call him a lot.
Yep. Yeah. I did. I had an every Friday I would drive. When I first got out of college, I'd drive Atlanta to Tallahassee, because I still kept this Friday gig because it paid well and kind of kept me connected, to my buddies that were still there and stuff. And every single Friday on my way down there, I'd call him and we'd talk for 3 hours. So like we never ran out of anything to talk about.
Yeah.
Or hey, Pops, I'm going to pull off and get some gas. And he's like, all right, just call me back. And I'd get gas and right back on the road, call him. Of course, then as I slowly started, not making that drive as much and getting busier and your life comes in, you don't have that as much, or you don't make those, think about the hours of how many hours I spent on the phone with him doing that every week. Definitely in a time when I needed that, And as you get older and you start having your own family and everything else, he'd make those comments to me sometimes, about, call your dad sometime,
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I'd always say, well, the phone works both ways, Dad, but it wasn't about that. It's just, he wants you to call him.
Yeah, that's how it was with my dad.
Yeah, he'd say, well, I don't want to, I know you're busy and I don't want to, slow you down.
I don't want to bother you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's a parent thing. It'll probably be us someday.
It will be for sure.
But that's really sweet that you guys have that relationship.
Yeah, man.
Because I feel like it really changes a man. When you lose your father, it's like I lost my mom too, but losing my dad was, not to discount my relationship with my mom, but the father thing was a very different feeling in terms of feeling like, okay, like there's no more, maybe it's a safety net, or like it's me now, like my job to, I'm the man carrying the torch.
Yeah. You're the patriarch of the whole situation now. Yeah.
So there's a whole new like gravity towards being a husband, being a father, being a friend, just like a person of character, all the things. And then for me, wanting to make my dad proud in my actions. And I'm curious if in the loss of your dad, there's things that have inspired you to want to do, maybe in part of, like you had mentioned earlier, like thinking about doing more of the artist stuff again. Is there anything in you that maybe subconsciously is like triggered by like, my dad's gone and I want to do something?
I just had this conversation the other day, and I think I actually said it without someone else prompting it, and it kind of clicked for me, but I don't know why. So I used to fish a lot, like way back in the day, but since I've lived in Nashville, barring being somewhere where that's where you're going there to go fishing or do whatever, I don't do a lot of fishing around here. And to me, it may be that it's just less accessible, or I don't think the fish are as big as they are in Alabama or what, I don't know, but I have done less of it here. And this year, I just have had this absolute hankering to go fishing, like take my son fishing. So, and we've done it quite a bit now just recently, and it's going that way. And I think the other day, a buddy of mine who doesn't fish a ton, but now he's all of a sudden like, man, all I want to do is fish. I was like, you know what? I think it might be just the subconscious part of me, like trying to fill this void of like something that I used to enjoy doing with my dad, you know? So I'm like, I definitely am making more of an effort to do it than I would before, you know? And so that definitely could be that. And I don't know that the artist side of it is. I think I'm like, have been pushed by some friends to do this, and it's kind of built up over a few years. But my dad would also always ask me that. He's like, well, you know, if no one's going to record it, why don't you record it? And I'm like, doesn't really work that way, Dad. It's not like just I'll record it. Now it's going to be some, you know, hit song. So, so you might be right. That could be part of getting that out. But I think the fishing thing seems to me like it's him kind of nudging me from up there and being like, dude, go wet a line.
Yeah.
Be quiet, be still, catch some fish.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I do think that that's a thing, because it's almost like bringing back something that was special and sacred to you and honoring your dad in a way. Like for me, I have my own thing that kind of like popped back into my life, and it was just interesting. And I think it was almost subconscious, but it's like this. Yeah. I was just curious if that experience happened to you.
I think so. I think it just happened. I think had you asked me that and I sat here and thought about it, I might be like, oh, you know, maybe so. But I think somehow I had that epiphany just a couple of weeks ago where I was like, I think it's my dad telling me to go, you know, go fishing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And do it with your boy.
Yeah.
And teach
He's
him.
good. He's still, you know, we get out there and he's like, he'll cast the first one. And then, you know, then he wants to go like, you know, play with sticks and throw rocks in the water. And Dad, have you caught me a fish yet? You know, I'm like, you know,
of course.
Yeah.
Scare all the fish away.
Exactly. Yeah. I just saw a thing the other day that said, you know, when you get to be an adult, you realize that talking doesn't actually scare the fish away. It's just that your dad wanted you to just be quiet for a minute.
That's a good quote, man. And you golf a lot too. And I've noticed a lot of musicians golf. And like I was telling you before we started, like Haley, I and Harlan will go out. And it's one of the few times that I get away from, like I have a work phone and a non-work phone, and I'll bring my non-work phone and I'll just like unplug and be in nature.
Yeah.
It's one of the few times that I feel like I do that. And it's so cathartic.
100%.
Is that what draws you to golf?
I think so. I think that I know for a long time, and I would golf with my dad. I think it was just a place I always felt the safest. Like I felt like no matter what was going on in the rest of the world, you were there in that moment for, you know, 3-4 hours, and you deal with whatever it was afterwards. And I find that now I'll play a round of golf and the only reason I look at my phone now is because I have a kid. So if, you know, my wife is texting me about something or calling me about something, I'm aware that I need to just check every once in a while, but I could very easily go without even thinking about looking at my phone on a golf course for 4 hours. Like, nope, because there's something going on, you know, be it just catching up or hanging out with your buddies or just BSing, or like somebody hits some great shot or someone's struggling and you're laughing at the struggles they're going through, or, you know, you're struggling and they're laughing at you, or, you know, or you're hitting some crazy shot after playing terribly and you hit something that brings you right back to it. I don't know. There's just something very cool to me about golf. I love it. I love the fact that it's different. Every course is different. The weather is always different. Every single day is different, even if you're playing the same course every day. I mean, there's something different going on, different groups of people that you're playing with, or and the way that you get to know people on a golf course, you know. I think that you can learn in one round of golf about all you need to know about somebody for the person they are, like the way they react to good shots, the way they react to bad shots, the way they treat people, on the golf course, the way that if they're aware of anyone else but themselves, or having etiquette or all those little things come into play. There's these little nuances of golf that I think tells you a lot about people that you play with. So a lot of times, first time I meet someone and it's on a golf course and they, we have a great time. I mean, I stay in pretty good contact with those people for a long time. My wife sometimes I'll say, oh, I'm going to go do this show for so-and-so. She's like, who is that? I've never even heard of that person. I'm like, oh, well, I played golf with them like 6 months ago, and now we talk 2 or 3 times a week, and we go hang out with them out there and play this charity tournament for them or something, So I think golf allots that to people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what my dad always told me growing up when I was learning to play golf. He was like, this is where like business happens on the golf course. Like,
it definitely does.
It's important for a man, to know how to play golf. And so that's funny that you say that because it sounds like that's really true. Question random. I saw on your Instagram one time, I think you were on a private jet. And I was like, who are you? Like, you have the the most interesting, life of someone ever. Like, you post just enough for me to be super interested. and
good. I love you said not too much to be annoyed.
No, dude, just intrigued, man. How did you? And I'm just curious why you were on a private jet. I just have to know.
So
is that regular? Do you just fly private?
I mean, if I'm just going somewhere, I'm not flying on a private jet by myself, or I'm not. Yeah. In my whole life, I've paid the bill for a private jet for me and other people one time. That was like the one big bill. I've been lucky enough to have a lot of friends that have done well, or, music and golf is a crazy connector for people. And a lot of that comes in where, Cole Taylor and Cole Swindell and myself and our, partner, Amelia Varney, we have a thing called Playing Through, where we go play these really intimate acoustic shows at these great golf courses. And a lot of those people that are members or that have been successful and have planes and stuff, they're like, hey, we'll fly over there. And a lot of good friends I've made that just have that ability to add that comfort into life.
Yeah.
It adds a lot because it makes it easier to get somewhere that's kind of in the middle of nowhere, or, it saves you time, and time is one thing we don't have, that we can get back. So,
I think it's the coolest thing in the world. I mean, I follow a Gulfstream and Bombardier on Instagram, and I'm always looking at private jets, and I'm like, does it have the oval windows? Oh, they're on the Gulfstream,
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot to it.
That's cool.
I've done a lot of it. Like, it's kind of funny. I've gotten to know, no planes. And a lot of that is from, buddies calling saying, hey, we want to go. And I've actually helped some buddies that are bigger artists or something wanted to go somewhere. And they're like, hey, I figured you would know. And so I've met people that broker the planes and, that kind of stuff. And then I have some buddies that have them that like to keep them in the air. So can go through those guys and pay them, but it's definitely cool. It's always fun. Every time you get on one, it's like you get on the plane, you're like, this is cool. Nobody's really upset when you're hopping on a PJ with your buddies going somewhere to play music or play golf or something like that. So,
that's the dream.
Yeah.
That's the dream, man. And that's cool that you do that, because that's one of my big life goals. I'm totally cool with life being simple and never flying on a private jet, but big dream world. I have a G650.
G650, yep. I've ridden a couple of those. We've got one coming up in July that a buddy of ours has one in Ohio. We're going to go do a show up there. And
have you been in the 750?
I had.
That's a big boy. That's a big boy.
I have, and it was Hard Rock owned it.
Okay.
The casino, and we did a show up there, and they flew us up there to New Jersey from here. It's a big plane.
So they just fly it in BNA?
They do, yeah.
And then just fly you wherever and back?
We flew to New Jersey, and then we actually got off that plane, and Kiss was walking across the tarmac to get on the plane. They were sending them. They had just played the show the night before, so Hard
Were
Rock
you like,
was
"What's
sending
up,
them home.
Gene?"
Yeah. No, I was like, I'm going straight to the. I'm not saying anything.
That's funny.
But yeah, it was great. They had a couple stewardesses or I guess they're called flight attendants.
Yeah,
called now, I guess.
But they have a nice kitchen on that 750. Like
they made us like made to order pizzas and sushi.
wow,
It's pretty good.
See, that's what's up.
But
that's a lifestyle,
that's that
right
casino
there.
money, man. Those guys, they've
real.
got plenty.
Yeah, dude, that's who you want to be connected to, man.
Yeah,
the Hard Rock.
Until you don't.
Yeah,
until you owe them money.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Can you get there and like go home not in the red?
Yeah.
And then my interesting thing, I watched a lot of golf growing up, and John Daly was one of the people that I always was watching play that I thought was such an interesting dude and a mystery. And you have a relationship with him, and he is your self-proclaimed, or your son's self-proclaimed godfather.
Correct.
Will you tell that story?
Yeah. Well, he was here. I met John like 10 years ago, ish, in Nashville. He was in town, and a buddy of mine that knew him, that owned the establishment he was coming into, texted me and was like, "Hey man, I know you're a big golf guy. John Daly's coming in here tonight. You know, I don't know if you're coming up tonight, hang, but you should come meet him. He's a great guy." So I did, hung out. We met each other, traded numbers. John loves music. So,
yeah, he's a songwriter, isn't he?
Yeah. So and yes, he does write some songs, and
like he enjoys it for fun.
He loves songs.
Yeah.
Like loves them, loves music, loves original music, loves songs that he's never heard before, likes to hear it and be the first guy to hear them, that kind of stuff. And we stayed in touch over the years, but it wasn't like, we weren't like best friends or anything. It was just, you know, he'd run into somebody I knew somewhere, or I'd run into somebody he knew, and we'd text and occasional phone call.
Yeah.
And then COVID, he pretty much lived here the whole time, and on his bus up at our club. And so we started playing a lot of golf, and then we'd hang out on the porch, this thing he calls porch talk, where you just sit there and have some drinks and end up start playing guitar and sit there till 2 or 3 in the morning hanging out. And so we played a lot of golf during that time, and just became closer and became good friends. And then that was the same time when my son was being born. And so
what was it about him that drew you guys together? Like, do you feel like you just clicked? There was something about it.
Yeah, well, there's like, without a doubt, I can't deny the fact that, you know, it's John. So it's the same thing as you. Like when I was growing up, I mean, it's John Daly, you know, I mean, he's a legend. He's a living legend. So there is certainly a draw to people like that, because you're like, man, that's cool. Like, I want to know more about this guy. But I think as we started, I think his love of music made it very easy. I think it made me way more tolerable to him, certainly, because he's like, this guy can play guitar and write songs and sing songs. And then as we got to know each other just personally, he's got a huge heart. He's just really one of the most generous and kind people out there. He's one of the guys that anytime I've ever had someone come play golf with him or come hang out and meet him, they're all like, God, he's like twice as cool as I thought he'd be, you know, and most people think he's going to be pretty cool. And I think he deals with that in life, because I think he always feels like he has to be on. And that's tough, I'm sure, but he really is just a really kind, good dude. And I think our conversations and our friendship started usurping music and golf. Like, it started being more like, you know, talking about other things, other aspects of our life. And so as we became friends, and then my son was born, and, you know, John's like, I'm going to be his godfather. You know, I was like, I'm not sure that that's the way that normally gets done, but I mean, but at the same time, I'm like, let's go. That's great. So, you know, but he was surprisingly serious in the sense that he was like, all right, well, let me know what church we're going to do this, you know? And I was like, let's not. So we brought Harlan over when he was like, I guess 3 weeks old, and got on John's bus and sat there, and John got out his crooked stick trophy and his British Open trophy, and takes this big picture with him, and kind of christened him his godson. And but he's got a great relationship with Harlan now. I mean, like he's like, on the regular FaceTimes and everything else, and Harlan loves him, calls him Uncle John. And anytime that if he's in town, which is more than you'd think, he'll be out on the porch and be like, "Hey, you're gonna bring Harlan up today?" And then when Harlan comes up, they hang out thick as thieves.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that's really sweet too. Not to like be like push any emotional buttons, but I would imagine that you've had the thought like your dad you don't get it's more about you don't get to see your dad watch your son grow up, and I don't get to see my dad watch my son grow up. So to have someone that's an older male figure is really sweet. There's something special there.
No doubt. And I am lucky enough that I've become friends with a lot of guys that are not my dad's age, but maybe only 10 years younger or so. That I look up to, be it less like my dad, more like a big brother.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of great male role models that I'm friends with that I really respect, and that all care a lot about Harlan. So I'm not too worried about that side of things like with it, but
that's sweet, man.
But yeah, so that's good. And John being one of those people, but I think there's quite a few. And I think my dad always thought it was cool too, because John knew my dad and, called him Pops. And, that was just, I think from the first time when I introduced my dad and John, I was like, "John, this is my Pops." And he's like, "What's up, Pops?" And then from then on, anytime, I guess my dad felt like that was normal to go like sit down and drink a beer with John once, but I don't think it was lost on him. I think he still thought that was crazy. It's like, but then it was just simple. It was like, it's cool that almost all the people that I know knew my dad.
That's special.
And so, so a lot of those guys have, they're aware of what he was like, and, later in life, less so, but throughout it. So I still got a lot of his people that know him around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet, man. I really appreciate you coming up here.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you having me. I know it took us a minute to get the calendars to work.
It feels it feels like we've been talking for a year or something, but I'm really glad that you could be on the podcast, and
me too, man.
We could chat, and I could meet you, man. Cause
same, dude.
It's funny that guitar and golf, or music and golf, are such an integral part of your life. And my AOL whatever username growing up, did you do that? Like chat with your friends on that? Mine was guitar and golf, but like mixed up. So it was GGUOTARLF. Yeah. And it was me intertwining those two things that were like my two favorite things.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it's just cool that there's a lot of that in this Nashville community of the love for both of those.
Yeah, you have to come down and hang one night or one afternoon, play golf, and then figure out when we have some sitting around. Maybe next time John's in town, and go play golf, and then sit around and pull on some guitars and hang out.
Do some picking. That'd be fun. I need to take some golf lessons first, though.
It's fair. He's easy to play in front of. He'll act like he didn't see any bad shots. Then when you hit a good one, he'll be like, "Great shot."
Yeah, dude. That's cool. Well, my last piece of my last question is you giving a piece of advice, and I'm just curious about if you were just to give a piece of advice to people that might be younger or look up to you, or the younger you, like explaining what would you go back and you would tell the younger you currently, the person that was maybe really eager in life to make things happen and to reach mountaintops? What would you tell that young guy?
I think that you have to trust yourself. I think a lot of people are willing to listen to a lot of outside noise and try and make themselves who they're not. I think everyone goes through, I think you have to go through a part of that. Like I remember a part of when I was making music and I did a photo shoot one time that when I got to the photo shoot, everyone's like, oh, you ought to try and look like this. And then I get done with the photo shoot and I was like, that doesn't even look like me. Why did I think in the moment it was cool? Because 5 people at the photo shoot were like, this is how you'd look cool. And that's just one like little snippet. But I think that in general, I know people hear it ad nauseum. You have to be true to yourself. And sometimes you don't know who you are. Like you're still growing and you're becoming the person you are. But I think really staying true to yourself and being who you are and letting only the people that you look up to and respect change you. You know, obviously we all change throughout life, but the people that are going to change and affect you, you should really respect those people and know those people. I don't think just some random person that you think has some great, cool life comes and tells you to change something about yourself or whatever. I don't think that's the reason to change. I think it's the people that you meet, that you respect, look up to, and love those people. That's who should be molding you into who you become. And I think that in general, it's a normal part of life to not do that. And as you get older and have more success or get to a certain point, you can certainly look back and say that. And easier said than done because it always is going to affect you that way. But I think just being true to yourself, working hard, and be genuinely kind to people. Like do your absolute best to go out of your way to be kind to people and be good. Don't make bad decisions. Like don't make mean decisions or decisions to spite people. Don't make decisions to screw people over. Just do the right thing. Really. That'll be it.
That's a great word. Tyler Reeve,
Yes,
been
sir.
a pleasure.
Thank you, buddy. Thanks for having me.
This is the Stephan Hogan Podcast.